is definitely one of the stranger cases I've covered. It seems like it comes right out of a novel. On November 12th, 2012, Jake Nolan set out to the office and home of Dr. Michael Weiss. Jake had with him a duffel bag with a massive sledgehammer, a steak knife, zip ties, and he's walking through the streets of Manhattan with this.
When you walked into Dr. Michael Weiss's office with that duffel bag, with the weapons that were inside, what did you intend to do?
You know, I intended to kill him.
This is not a whodunit. He did what he was accused of doing. But the big question was, why? I saw Jake Nolan brainwashed by Dr. Pamela Buckbinder.
An Ivy League trained psychiatrist.
She's brilliant.
I would have done anything for Pamela. It happens so slowly that you don't really recognize this growing feeling inside of you that one day you wake up and say, I'll kill for this woman.
By the end of this manipulation by Dr. Bookbinder, Jake Nolan had become weaponized to attack Dr. Weiss, the man with whom she had been fighting over custody of her son.
They hated each other, and in turn, she made me hate him. She had already told me that she wanted me to hit him over the head, playing like, you know, Maxwell's Silver Hammer by the Beatles repeatedly in the house.
Bang, bang, Maxwell's Silver Hammer made sure that she was dead.
Jake Nolan suffered from bipolar disorder. He had these learning problems. He had personality problems.
Pamela took someone who she knew was severely mentally ill, and she morphed me into whatever she wanted me to be, and I obeyed, just like a puppet.
She used him for her own benefit. She sacrificed him.
His office door was open, and I see Michael sitting in a chair. I think this is really when I became fully psychotic.
I don't buy Jake's story that he was brainwashed and manipulated. He knew exactly what he was doing.
And do you believe that each step of the way, Jake could have made the decision to leave?
Of course he could have.
And Dr. Bookbinder claims that she had no involvement at all in this, that anything Jake Nolan did, he did completely on his own.
911, where's emergency?
Hi, I can hear someone out in my hallway screaming in pain, but I don't know what's going on out there, and I'm afraid to go out.
And what was so odd about this is he didn't try to flee. Jake Nolan starts snapping selfies of himself, covered in blood. I mean, who would possibly snap a selfie of themselves right after they tried to murder someone?
There's never gonna be a night I don't fall asleep feeling awful for what I've done.
To this day, Jake Nolan insists his mind was not his own when he set out to kill Dr. Michael Weiss at his office on November 12th, 2012.
The knife was in my pocket and the sledgehammer was over my shoulders. He sees the sledgehammer and charges at me, and I reached for the knife. Here I am with this knife and the guy's bleeding and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is terrifying. It's as if I woke up from a bad dream.
After Jake stabbed him, Dr. Weiss fought back furiously. Both men ended up in the hallway of the Manhattan high-rise.
911, where's emergency?
This guy's screaming like crazy for help.
Both men were rushed to the hospital, where Jake was placed under arrest for attempted murder and handcuffed to his bed. In the weeks ahead, Jake's bizarre story unfolded. His claim that he had been manipulated to kill by his own cousin, psychiatrist Pamela Bookbinder.
My experience with Pamela, looking back, was incredibly frightening, incredibly frightening.
Jake's target that day, Michael Weiss, was Pamela's ex-boyfriend and another psychiatrist.
Do you believe he was brainwashed?
Yes. To be honest, I try and come in here as little as possible because it's just too many memories.
Debbie and Jim Nolan, Jake's parents, are devastated.
He is basically a really good kid who doesn't have a mean bone in his body.
Jake Nolan, it's a pleasure to be here.
Jacob, when we met Jake in the summer of 2016, he seemed rational.
I've been on meds now for over a year and a half that have finally worked for me.
But he says that wasn't always the case. Jake's parents insist that to understand how and why their then 20-year-old son could have been conditioned to kill, you have to go back to his childhood.
Jake was our third and our youngest child. He was an absolute delight. He was gifted, he was smart, he liked to invent things.
But Jake also had problems. By the age of 5, he was diagnosed with ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder.
There was something with him that just wasn't the same as everybody else, and we started to notice significant changes in his personality and his demeanor around the ages of 14, 15.
What did you see?
He went through these large mood swings.
Still, Jake had moments of brilliance while in high school in Miami. He made news after he won a prestigious contest, co-inventing a study tool app for iPhones called Flash Me.
And then a month later, I couldn't get out of bed. My parents bribed me with everything to get out of bed. Please get out of bed. Please get out of bed, Jake. You gotta go to school. Please go to school today. Don't miss another day of school.
Jake was then diagnosed with depression and anxiety. These episodes worsened to the point where at the age of 17, Jake threatened to kill himself.
He got a butcher knife from downstairs and he took it upstairs to his room and he said he was going to kill himself. We were terrified.
Jake was hospitalized and was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder.
Bipolar disorder is a severe and chronic mental illness that's characterized by severe mood swings.
Psychiatrist Dr. Sasha Bardet has evaluated Jake for the defense.
Swings that go from deep, dark, suicidal depressions to periods of incredible elation, grandiose ideas, poor judgment. He's a mess. He's such a prisoner of his own mind that he can't get anywhere in life.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of killing myself.
By the time Jake was in college, doctors had prescribed some 30 medications to treat him, with little success. Some of these medications change brain chemistry, do they not?
Well, these are powerful psychotropic medications. His disorder, his problems were so profound, sometimes he's taking 4, 5, 6 medications at once.
Jake admits he was also doing illegal drugs and drinking, barely making it to class. The Nolans thought their prayers had been answered when Dr. Pamela Bookbinder, Debbie's own niece, offered to help.
We thought this was great. I adored Pam.
You trusted her.
I trusted her with my most prized possession, my child.
The plan? Jake would live part-time with Pamela in her Manhattan apartment. She would give him therapy sessions and monitor his meds. In return, she proposed he help take care of her then 4-year-old son, Calder, in spite of Jake's mental illness.
Pamela and I had formed a relationship when I was really young. I mean, this is my cousin. This is someone I really knew. And I entrust everything into this one woman. I mean, this woman is going to save my life.
By all accounts, the plan seemed to be working.
I thought he was very happy, and I thought he was quite stable.
So you guys must have felt everything's coming together here.
Thank you.
Finally.
Thank you.
Right?
But the Nolans now say sending their son to live with Pamela was the biggest mistake they have ever made.
It's a total horrible nightmare.
To hear more of the 911 calls, join us on Facebook at 48 Hours.
When Jake Nolan went to live with his psychiatrist cousin, Dr. Pamela Bookbinder, he had no idea he'd end up on the front lines of a physical and psychological war.
The relationship between Dr. Bookbinder and Dr. Weiss was very toxic from the outset.
Reporter Rebecca Rosenberg has covered the case for the New York Post.
The relationship was on again, off again. There were allegations of domestic violence on both sides.
It definitely got physical.
Roland Acevedo is an attorney for Dr. Michael Weiss.
Is it true that Pam once attacked Michael with broken glass?
She was arrested and charged with an assault. He received stitches. I mean, there's physical proof that he was attacked.
Is it true that Michael Weiss has also been arrested in the course of this war with Pam?
Yes. Pamela contended that Michael threatened her or attempted to assault her.
In each incident, the charges were dismissed. But the war of the psychiatrists moved onto another battlefield, the courtroom, as Pamela and Michael fought over the custody of their son.
These are two psychiatrists. Couldn't they talk it out?
There was no communication.
But back during the times when he and Pamela were communicating big time, Michael Weiss attended family parties, including Jake's bar mitzvah.
Well, Pamela and I just want to wish you congratulations on your bar mitzvah. We're both so happy for you.
We were inspired by all of the speeches about opportunity and charm and character, and we think you have them all.
And that makes it even more incredible that Jake would target him.
This is a man who respected me and who I respected greatly.
Michael and Pamela never married and broke up for good soon after their son Calder was born.
Ready?
Yeah. When Calder was 4, Pamela asked Jake to be her child's godfather. Shortly before, she took Jake in. Jake's mother is convinced that is when Pamela began to manipulate his mind.
Jake had been feeling so bad about himself, and here, all of a sudden, I'm so important to Calder. Everything I do has to be right.
Yeah. This was a kid that I loved more than life.
Jake wants a normal life.
Defense psychiatrist Sasha Bardet says Pamela knew how to give Jake the life he craved.
He wants to be a successful, respected family man with a nuclear family and a happy life.
There's a photograph of the three of you in bed, basically in your underwear. What should we take from that picture?
I guess that just goes to show you the level of comfort that I really felt there. It was not unusual in the morning for her to invite me into bed with Calder and I, and to share that familiar moment. You know, really feel like a family together.
But Dr. Bardet finds these images deeply troubling.
When you think that you're seeing pictures of essentially a patient and his psychiatrist, it's really horrific. It's really creepy.
Just as troubling for Jake's family were text messages discovered on his cell phone.
Let me read to you some of the texts that Pam Bookbinder sent to Jake. You're just the most fun person to love. You're so beautiful. She'd call him Lovey, Sweet Jay. You are remarkable. You are brilliant. I have so many thoughts about you.
Well, this is almost sickening. And there was never any romantic or sexual relationship ever between these two people. So what this is all mental manipulation.
I miss you terribly, she would say when you were away. That sounds romantic.
You know, it does. I don't know what her intentions were to this day. I wouldn't be able to tell you.
And as Pamela was apparently building Jake up, he says she was tearing Michael Weiss apart, claiming Michael was refusing to pay Calder's child support and worse.
She had me convinced that he was being molested at his father's home.
And how many times did she say this? Was this repeated over and over?
Oh, this was every day.
Has Michael Weiss ever abused his son in any way?
Absolutely not. Michael worships that child.
Jake, what real evidence did you have that Michael was sexually abusing his son?
There was no evidence.
But at the time, Jake says, that's how Pamela was able to pull him into the plot to kill Michael Weiss.
Part of the indoctrination process was to get Jake to participate in developing the plan.
And the plan, if you believe Jake, was horrific.
Pamela was determined for me to torture Michael before killing him. She wanted me to inject him with some, poisonous chemicals. She wanted to burn him alive in front of a group of people.
Jake's story is dramatic, but is it true? Despite Jake's accusations, he was the only one charged. But Michael Weiss sued Dr. Bookbinder for the attack, and in court papers, she calls the claims against her utterly baseless and states, "I never asked Mr. Nolan to attack or harm Mr. Weiss."
Dr. Bookbinder also claims that there's no smoking gun here. There's no evidence of emails or text messages that show that she and Jake plotted this together.
You can't deny the footage that shows her in Home Depot buying a sledgehammer.
Jake insists this surveillance video at a Home Depot in New York City proves his claims. That's Pamela standing next to him, paying for the very tool that police would find the next morning on the floor of Michael Weiss's office.
Jake, there's no one that really disputes that you suffer from mental illness. But could you have another problem as well? Could you be a sociopath?
No, I could not. Had I never met Pamela Bookbinder, this wouldn't be my story.
As Jake Nolan's eyes opened on the morning of November 12, 2012, the day he was supposed to kill Michael Weiss, he says he wasn't alone.
Pamela was there in bed, rubbing my back, telling me how much she loved me, that I was a savior, that I was the greatest person ever, that no one else understood her.
Just the night before, Pamela had bought this sledgehammer at a Home Depot in New York.
That is Pamela Bookbinder paying for the sledgehammer. She's right there. She has cash in her hand.
With plans, Jake claims, of having him bash her ex-boyfriend in the head.
I intended to kill him.
Jake says that Pamela's lovey-dovey mood quickly changed as she allegedly packed a duffel bag with weapons.
She was hysterical, crying tears as she put the sledgehammer into a duffel bag with a kitchen knife.
Like she's packing a bag to head off to school, except this is to head off to a murder.
Exactly.
And there was one more item that was vital to the scheme.
The night before, she had provided me with the map and how to get into his apartment. She handed me that.
This map, which Pamela drew herself, showed the multiple entrances of Michael Weiss's building. Michael's attorney, Roland Acevedo.
Do you believe essentially this was a battle plan map?
I believe it was a map that Jake was provided to allow him to get access to Dr. Weiss's apartment without going through the normal security measures.
Pamela says she never gave Jake the knife, and that the map was given to Jake to help care for Calder.
It had the daycare where he was going. It had Dr. Weiss's building.
Jake says Pamela said goodbye that morning with just one goal in mind.
Today's the day. Life is going to be so much better after Michael is, she used the word terminated, after Michael is terminated.
Clutching that hand-drawn map, Jake headed to Michael's Midtown Manhattan high-rise.
He kind of scoped out the building on different sides. It had two separate entrances. Entered through the business entrance.
Jake signed in, writing that he was heading to a tutoring center in the building called Bright Kids. It was marked on the map. He didn't even bother using an alias.
I signed in with my own name. Remember, I was willing to die for this woman. I wasn't trying to hide anything.
Jake went straight to the 12th floor and walked in on Michael in the middle of a session. Jake left the office and waited in a stairwell while Michael finished with the patient.
What are you thinking to yourself? What's going through your head?
I think I was really nervous. I think I wanted to back out, but I didn't have a means to do it because I couldn't go back to Pamela without this done. I felt like I had no choice.
After the patient left, Jake asked Michael for some financial forms for Calder's school. Pamela claims picking up those forms was the only reason Jake was there. But Jake says it was all a ruse to distract Michael while Jake went to the restroom to prepare.
I grabbed the sledgehammer. I put the knife in my pocket. From here on out, I remember bits and pieces.
But according to Michael Weiss's attorney, Michael remembers it all too well.
Jake came out of a bathroom in Michael's office and hit him with a sledgehammer.
Michael managed to duck just in time, missing the full brunt of the 10-pound tool. Still, the sledgehammer made contact with his shoulder. That's when Michael says Jake reached for the knife.
That's when I first stabbed Michael Weiss. And then from there on out, it was a fight.
And then he stabbed Michael 7 or 8 times in various places. The stomach, the back, the chest.
Michael, who's 6'3" and 205 pounds, managed to overpower Jake.
On the ground, standing up, I got stabbed multiple times. I thought that someone was bound to die.
The two men stumbled into the hallway where neighbors heard the commotion.
I think it's a psychologist who might have had a client who was nuts.
Good morning, man. Call on. Patient breathing.
Yeah, but they got a lot of blood. They're losing a lot of blood.
Then, as he sat on the floor bleeding, Jake lifted his cell phone and took that selfie.
Why did you take a selfie?
We were sitting right next to each other, and I was reporting back to Pamela, like, what do I do next?
Jake says Pamela didn't respond. A short time later at the hospital, Jake tried texting her again.
This is what you wrote. In hospital, please come. Michael bleeding badly. Same. I walked into office. He stabbed me with my knife in the heart.
This time, Pamela answered with a single word. Where?
There was no plan for after the attack. I think it was Pamela's plan to just dismiss me and like, oh, well, he tried to kill him, he lost, try again later. I mean, I really believe it's her plan to try again later.
Hospital records say Jake was in a manic state after the attack. Pamela eventually showed up at the ER, but was not allowed to see Jake.
I was in full-blown psychotic episode. I was heavily medicated on morphine.
Michael Weiss suffered multiple cuts to his upper torso and legs. He was stitched up and released from the hospital. Jake was still recovering from his own wounds to his chest and hand when the reality of his arrest for attempted murder hit him.
Could Jake have backed out of the attack? See more of the crime scene photos at 48hours.com.
After his arrest for attempted murder, Jake Nolan spent 4 days recovering in the hospital. He then appeared before a judge and was freed on $200,000 bail pending trial. Jake was allowed to fly home to live with his parents outside of Miami.
Ready? What would you have said to Calder one day if he asked you, why did you kill my father?
I don't know. I gave everything for this child. I was willing to kill someone for this child. That alone can only show how sorry I feel when he finds out about this later on in life.
But what of Pamela Bookbinder? Soon after the attack, Michael sued for custody of their son, claiming Pamela was the mastermind. A family court judge considered the evidence in that case, including the Home Depot images, and granted Michael Weiss full custody of Calder and barred Pamela from any contact for 5 years.
The evidence showed, and the family court agreed, that Pamela was involved in the plan or plot to attack and kill Michael.
Despite the evidence presented in family court, Pamela was still not criminally charged in the attack. Why not? The district attorney's office will not comment. But Michael Weiss's attorney thinks part of the problem is the key accuser in this case.
Jacob, because he contends that he has this history of mental illness, is perhaps not the most reliable witness for the prosecution.
Jake spent much of his time awaiting trial in and out of treatment centers for both his mental problems and drug and alcohol addictions. Despite those efforts, his life almost came to a tragic end in May 2015.
What happened that caused you to be in this hospital bed?
I tried to kill myself. I tried to take my own life.
This time, Jake ended up in a coma after poisoning himself.
This was probably the worst day of my life because they told us they didn't think Jake was going to make it.
Finally, in March 2016, 3.5 years after the attack, Jake's trial gets underway in New York.
The prosecution portrayed Jake as kind of a spoiled rich kid.
Just one of many challenges for the defense.
Jake Nolan was a very unreliable narrator of this event.
For one thing, it wasn't until weeks after the attack that Jake claimed Pamela had manipulated him. Another problem?
He gave at least 3 different versions of what happened. Each was meant to cast him in the most innocent light possible.
In one version, Jake tried to put the blame on Michael Weiss.
When the first responders showed up, he immediately pointed the finger at Dr. Weiss and said, "He stabbed me."
In another account, Jake told investigators he never swung the sledgehammer.
This was a big hammer. I couldn't even lift the thing up.
Jake claims he only brought the sledgehammer and knife because he was afraid of Michael. Perhaps most stunning of all, a third version.
He claims that Dr. Weiss pulled the sledgehammer out of his bag and attacked him first with it. So that really doesn't make any sense. I mean, how would Dr. Weiss even know that the sledgehammer is in the bag?
Jake has said he had been convinced the attack on Michael was the only way to save Calder. But at trial, prosecutors hinted at another motive. Michael Weiss had taken out a $1.5 million life insurance policy.
The beneficiary was his son, who probably at the time was 3 or 4 years old.
But there was a catch. Just 3 days before the attack, Michael agreed to make Pamela the policy's irrevocable trustee.
What does that mean in English?
Irrevocable means can't be taken back.
So if Michael dies?
If Michael passed away, the child would get the $1.5 million, but she would be the person that controlled the money for the child.
Jake insisted he had no clue before the attack that money may have been involved.
I had no idea. Pamela never mentioned that to me.
Her plan was for you to kill him.
But the most damning evidence came from Jake himself. The prosecution's psychiatrist interviewed Jake before trial, and clips from the exam were played to jurors. In one, a shockingly frank discussion about another item Pamela bought at Home Depot.
What was the zip ties for?
She wanted me to torture Michael, which I didn't tell her, but I wasn't down to do that.
So you were down to kill but not torture?
Yeah.
Okay. What did she want you to do to torture him?
She wanted me to cut off his balls, she said.
That was a line too far for you?
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know, I've never heard anyone before.
The prosecution saw this as a stunning admission. On tape, at least, it appears Jake was a willing participant in planning the attack and could draw a line when he wanted to.
The crux of the prosecution's argument here is that this is not some babbling idiot that didn't know which way was up.
I think I was in control up to a degree, but the deal was to kill Michael Weiss. The deal wasn't to torture Michael Weiss.
It might seem like Jake is splitting hairs, but one of Jake's lawyers, Stephen Brownstein, says that's exactly how Jake's mind was working. In fact, it's why he and his legal team argue a risky defense: diminished capacity.
You're going to have to admit that your client did the crime, but his capacity to establish the intent, the motive to commit that crime, he lacked, and therefore he should be found not guilty.
I understand that the prosecution feels that clearly Jake never had a gun to his head. In my opinion, psychologically speaking, he did.
Dr. Sasha Bardet, who testified for the defense at trial, says Pamela had replaced Jake's free will with her own.
It's very much like a cult where there is a shaping of the person's thought processes to meet the cult's ideals. It's a small cult. It has 2 people in it. There's the cult leader, Pamela Bookbinder, and the cult member, Jake Nolan.
Jake never takes the stand. Pamela Bookbinder never even set foot in the courtroom. Neither side called her to testify. In March of 2016, after a 2-week trial, the jury began its deliberations. In less than an hour,
The jury comes back. We have reached a verdict. Guilty.
Guilty of attempted murder.
It's unjust. I'm no harm to society.
And a little over 3 months later, the judge describes the attack as an act of extreme brutality and violence, and sentences Jake Nolan to 9.5 years in prison.
You're in just such shock.
I was like somebody just crushed me from top to bottom, just totally took my heart right out of me.
And what of Michael Weiss, the man Jake Nolan would have killed if the murder plot had succeeded?
He's been traumatized by this.
I know what I did was very serious, but there is also another party that needs to take responsibility too.
And that person is?
It's Pamela Bookbinder.
And her role in this sordid case is about to take...
Let's wait till she comes down.
...a dramatic turn.
Pamela Bookbinder, Peter Van Sant from 48 Hours.
No, she's not.
I have a simple question.
No,
Why did
she's
you
not
buy that
interested.
sledgehammer?
Pamela Bookbinder, the most talked about woman during Jake Nolan's trial, had always managed to elude the public. But we caught up with Pamela about 4 months after Jake Nolan was sentenced.
I have a simple question. Why did you buy that sledgehammer?
You know what?
You can answer that question. Were you going to do some home improvement, or were you buying a murder weapon?
Out of her face. I can
can't
touch
touch
the camera.
Pamela.
Get it out of her face. Get it out
Pamela,
of
you
her
can
face.
answer that question.
But on October 19th, 2017, almost 5 years after Michael Weiss was attacked, the law finally caught up with Dr. Pamela Bookbinder. Bookbinder was arrested at a friend's house outside Syracuse, New York. She was charged with second-degree attempted murder and first-degree attempted assault. The Manhattan District Attorney accused Bookbinder of masterminding the plot to send Jake Nolan to murder her ex-boyfriend and the father of her son, Michael Weiss.
I'm not guilty.
At the time, Jake Nolan would not comment on Pamela Bookbinder's arrest, but Michael Weiss's attorney did.
I was not surprised when she was indicted and arrested. The prosecutor's office said months ago during the Nolan trial that they thought she was involved, and I think the evidence against her is significant.
Pamela is innocent. I'm telling you that.
Pamela Bookbinder hired 2 top New York defense attorneys, Ronald Fischetti and Eric Franz,
Pamela Bookbinder had nothing to do with that,
who say that this video of Bookbinder buying that sledgehammer is just a sideshow.
Pamela Bookbinder is an educated psychiatrist, not Wile E. Coyote. She didn't plan to orchestrate a murder with a sledgehammer that the man couldn't pick up.
Bookbinder's attorneys argued before 2 judges that their client should be granted bail, and her family offered to put up a $1.5 million bond to guarantee she wouldn't run off. This despite the fact that when she was arrested, she had in her possession her passport, birth certificate, and her son Calder's expired passport.
The entire world has fallen on this woman, periodically, methodically, over the last 5 years. And what did she do? She engaged counsel, she engaged a bondsman, she stayed around and made no attempts to flee.
Her attorneys contend that the case has essentially been solved and that Jake Nolan is the sole perpetrator.
He admitted everything.
When you walked into Dr. Michael Weiss's office with that duffel bag, with the weapons that were inside, what did you intend to do?
You know, I intended to kill him.
Bookbinder's legal team later pointed to what they say is an incriminating new piece of evidence found buried in their legal file. A note allegedly written by Jake Nolan to his mother Debbie after the attack in 2012 as he recovered in the hospital. It reads, "Pamela has nothing to do with this."
This man acted completely on his own.
So it's a very, very crucial piece of evidence.
Remember, Jake's defense team said he wrote this letter while he was in what his doctors called a manic state and heavily medicated.
That note probably can't be admitted into evidence in any event because it's hearsay.
After the judge heard these arguments, he refused to grant Bookbinder bail. She was ordered held in New York's notorious Rikers Island jail, where she remained for 5 years through legal wrangling and the pandemic. Then on September 7th, 2022, in a pretrial hearing, she made a stunning announcement. She accepted a deal to spend 11 years in prison in exchange for pleading guilty to attempted assault and a lesser charge in connection with Dr. Weiss's attack, seemingly bringing her case to a close. But just 1 month later, Bookbinder turned her routine sentencing on its head, with her lawyers telling Judge Farber that she wanted to withdraw her plea. She claimed on the day she agreed to the deal, she was exposed to mace on Rikers Island. She did not take her medication, and she inadvertently got a contact high when someone was smoking drugs on her bus ride to court. But Judge Thomas Farber would have none of it. He ordered the plea deal to stand and the sentencing to continue. Dr. Weiss showed up to make a victim's impact statement. He did not want to be recorded while he read his remarks, telling the court that he suffers from PTSD and that he believes Bookbinder has so much hatred for him that she will do anything in her power to harm him, even after she is released from prison. Prosecutor Joel Seidemann was next, and he did not hold back.
I think it's necessary to make the record straight. The defendant tried to have Dr. Michael Weiss murdered. She hated his guts. She sought to destroy him because of their failed relationship. She stood to control $1.5 million in life insurance on his life in the name of his son.
Bookbinder's attorney had heard enough.
Objection, Your Honor, has nothing to do with the underlying allegations in this case. It's a sentencing, not a lynching.
I understand, Mr. Franz, but I don't control what the DA says at sentence.
And Seidemann kept going.
She's on video. All of her genius, in terms of academic genius, didn't mean that she could outwit the NYPD, who immediately went to Home Depot when they saw the sledgehammer and they knew where it came from. And she sent Jacob Nolan with a map.
Bookbinder's lawyer finally had his chance to speak.
Well, that was a rather unpleasant experience following a negotiated disposition. The bottom line is, her pleading guilty is not a license to step on her throat and just say whatever you want. That's an injustice. She stands ready for sentence, Your Honor.
Ms. Buckbinder, you can speak if you wish to. You don't have to.
She was brief.
If there was one true statement Mr. Seidemann said, I missed it.
Judge Farber had the final say.
There can be no doubt that if you plot to bash somebody's head in with a sledgehammer, that the intent is to cause his death.
He then reminded everyone that he presided over Jacob Nolan's trial back in 2017.
The compelling and powerful evidence at that trial supported Mr. Nolan's account that Ms. Buckbinder planned to brutally murder Dr. Weiss.
Farber then sentenced Bookbinder to serve 11 years in prison, and he also issued an order of protection for Dr. Weiss. And just before officers took Bookbinder away, she turned to her family and friends, who blew kisses at her. Defense attorney Monica Nejatame says that in 2027, Pamela Bookbinder will be free to start her life over and even reach out to her son.
There's no question about her love for her son.
A son with secrets.
He just lied to everybody.
His parents vanish.
You know, cars go off the road. Things happen.
What happened to the Haldersons?
Not making any sense. And it's taking weirder and weirder turns.
Nobody saw this coming.
48 Hours, next on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. 48 Hours presents.
This is Officer the Houston Police Department, Major Offenders Division, Career Criminal Squad.
Hey, my name is Valerie McDaniel. I've always tried to be an honest, kind person. I've tried to live the best life I can.
Valerie wound up being the top of the class.
The valedictorian?
The valedictorian in our 1987 high school graduating class. She sure did.
My name is Megan. She's my second cousin. She's generous and creative, smart, nice and sweet. She would always take care of my dog.
wasn't sure if I should be a vet anymore, and Valerie brought that passion back. I know that Valerie made an audio recording of all of her memorable moments in life.
I met, through friends, a man named Mac McDaniel. And I thought he was the cutest thing. Tall and skinny with his boots.
Valerie and Mac lived a lavish lifestyle.
A high-end life, you know, a life of luxury, a life of beauty.
Great cars. Valerie had a Mercedes. Her daughter went to a great school. They worked a lot. That was a big thing. They'd both be working and...
But did they seem happy together?
Yeah, it seemed great.
One morning at work, there was a note on my desk that said, Dr. McDaniel, call Miss Brown. She said, I've been your husband's lover.
It tore her up. Divorce is never an easy thing. She met Leon.
A medical doctor. He actually went to the same school I did. A little bit of ER, but then also like cardio and transplant.
I looked at him and smiled, and he smiled back, and just a beautiful person.
Her face, her smile, she had this outwardly exuberance of energy that I really can't describe.
She fell for Leon. She was madly in love with him.
We were planning on getting married. Mac always wanted more, at the detriment of their daughter.
My name is Motaz Aziz, and Lee and Jacob tried to hire me as a hitman.
In the car, did he give you $2,500?
Yeah, he paid the $2,500.
In cash?
Yes, in cash, right.
And what did you see on his face?
Excitement. He was enjoying it. Like, he actually was excited about the whole thing.
I could never hurt the man that my daughter loves so much.
The male subject, he's gone. He's done.
All right.
This has been a long, drawn-out story that's led to an unbelievable conclusion.
When he came into my office, he shut the door. He said, I'm Dr. Leon Jacob. I felt like I was talking to Satan himself.
"48 Hours, Operation Murder," reported by Peter Van Sant.
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be a major offenders investigation.
It's 3 a.m. on Friday, March 10th, 2017. Houston police are making their way to the 7th floor condo of beloved veterinarian Valerie McDaniel. Bad doesn't begin to describe what's about to be revealed.
Ex-husband's been found. It looks like it turns out to be a fatality.
Valerie's ex-husband, Mac, police tell her, was dead just 6 months after their divorce had become final.
Do you have anybody you can call to help you, to stay with you?
But how could Valerie's life have arrived at this dreadful moment? Valerie earned her degree in veterinary medicine at Texas A&M. It was during that time she met Mac McDaniel, Valerie's friend, Greg Holloway.
My impression of Mac is that he was a good man. He was a stand-up guy.
Mac proposed, and Valerie had the man of her dreams, as she describes in that recording of her memories.
We did get married. We had a beautiful fairy tale wedding. Moved into a house that my parents had bought for me to live in.
Not long after that, Valerie decided to open her own clinic. Valerie's cousin, Cody Bernard.
I admired her. It sunk something inside of me. I want to do that one day, something big, you know.
Mac was her office manager, but even as the vet clinic thrived, the two longed for something more.
She said she couldn't have any children, so the only option was to adopt.
In 2008, the couple adopted a daughter when she was just 2 days old. But as their new family came together, their marriage began to fall apart. It started, Valerie says, with a phone call from a stranger, the woman who claimed to have been Mac's lover. But Valerie says that wasn't all.
She gave me lists of women that he had slept with.
Valerie says she confronted Mac and forgave him, but claims it wasn't long before Mac cheated again.
And that was the first time I ever said the word divorce, and I yelled it at him outside, and I yelled it and I yelled it.
Valerie says she forgave Mac yet again, but then a chance encounter would change the course of her life. Leon Jacob, the son of Valerie's neighbor, Golda Jacob, stopped by.
He ran up to me and stuck his hand out and introduced himself. The cockiest mother ever met in my life.
Valerie was in her mid-40s, but she was stunning, both inside and out.
The attraction was mutual.
You could tell he knew how beautiful he was. And I was lonely.
Leon Jacob was 8 years younger than Valerie and a doctor.
What type of surgeries have you done?
All kinds of surgeries. I've assisted in heart, kidney, pancreas, transplants.
With a strained home life and an attractive new friend, what happened next may have been inevitable.
And he sat across from me and we had some wine, and I had my feet out on the chair next to him. And just out of the blue, he reached out and just ran his finger up my left foot, and that was it. It was like a movie moment.
It's quite an interlude, according to what she described.
Yeah, compliments all around, I guess.
In December 2014, Valerie filed for divorce, claiming Mac committed adultery. Mac's attorneys told us Mac had no comment about the divorce petition and the claims Valerie made in her audio diary.
Between Mac's alleged cheating and Valerie's new love interest, both wanted out of the marriage. The divorce was finalized in August 2016. Valerie and her daughter then moved into this building in the upscale River Oaks section of Houston. Not long after, Leon joined them here.
The relationship really blossomed quickly because we had been very close friends for so long.
Dr. Brittany King worked alongside Valerie at the vet clinic.
They seemed very much in love, holding hands and loving towards each other.
But there was one old problem in Valerie and Leon's new relationship, and his name was Mac.
There were multiple times in the clinic where she would just be in tears. Was everything okay? And it was something surrounding her ex-husband.
Mac had found out that Leon was staying with me.
There'd be arguments or stuff with the child, visitation.
But Leon had his own issues with past loves, one involving extreme mental cruelty and another, assault and stalking charges.
Leon Jacob is a predator. He's scary.
Samantha Connect is a Harris County Assistant District Attorney.
He wants what he wants, and he'll stop at nothing to get it.
Could there be more to Valerie's new love than she can imagine?
He has no problem using women. In fact, I think he enjoys it.
Valerie McDaniel's new live-in boyfriend grew up in a Texas-sized world of beauty, opulence, and opportunity.
I always wanted to be a doctor my whole life, ever since I was about 3 or 4.
As he pursued his degrees, Leon met and married his college sweetheart. They had 2 boys.
We had a happy, loving family. I got 2 great kids, 2 boys. They're the most important things to me in my life.
A good family, and now with an MD after his name, Leon was well on his way. But Leon's picture-perfect life disguised a troubled relationship. After 12 years of marriage, his wife filed for divorce, citing extreme mental cruelty. And 1 year later, Leon was arrested for stalking his now ex.
Leon has to be in control. When his ex-wife went to end their relationship, he wasn't going to have it, and he wasn't going to go down without a fight.
Leon, isn't it true that you've had brushes with the law involving stalking, cyber stalking, intimidation, physical harassment, assault? Aren't all those true?
I pled guilty to a attempted cyber harassment charge that was stemming from an acrimonious divorce that I went through with my previous wife.
Leon admits that he called often, but he claims it was simply to speak with his boys.
I tried desperately to contact my kids over and over and over again, and I'm not going to apologize for that.
Leon finally moved on to a new residency and was living in Pittsburgh, where he met this woman, 33-year-old Megan Veracas.
I met Megan in a hotel in Pittsburgh. She was the assistant general manager there.
The new couple moved to Houston. There were lavish vacations, family get-togethers, and yet another residency, Leon's 7th.
He's a failed doctor. He's been kicked out of every residency program he's ever been a part of.
And what's the problem? What was the basis of these dismissals? Do you know?
The belief that he was the smartest guy in the room, inability to get along with people, inability to get along with patients. And in fact, one of the records that we found said that they believed that he was a danger to patients and that he would be a liability for them to keep around.
3 years into their relationship, Megan Veracas thought Leon was a threat to her too. Megan kicked Leon out of their apartment, later accusing him of assaulting her.
She wanted me to move all my stuff out. She came there and was very hostile. The police were called. There was no violence of any kind. And a day later, she claimed that I had hit her.
And that you'd put your hand over her mouth.
Yeah, which is not true.
Leon is about Leon.
Smile, Megan, smile.
It frustrated him to no end that Megan Veracas would not forgive him. And the fact that he couldn't get Megan back frustrated him and angered him.
Leon was arrested in February 2017 for assault and stalking.
You can charge anybody with anything. It doesn't mean that you're guilty of that.
The DA's office has been on this case since its inception. We helped.
Prosecutors are convinced that Leon knew his future as a doctor would be destroyed if Megan testified against him. So they believe he planned a little operation to make his pain go away.
He feels like if Megan disappears, if she goes away, that his criminal case will go away and he can resume his career as this beloved surgeon that he thinks that he is.
Prosecutors claim Leon decided what he needed was a hitman, and he thought he'd found one.
Taz, are you a hitman?
No.
Were you ever willing to murder anyone for money?
No. I would never do something like that.
Taz Azay was introduced to Leon by a mutual acquaintance.
Did Leon ever tell you how he wanted his ex-girlfriend to be killed?
Yes, he actually offered suggestions. One of them was a syringe to the heart with potassium would give her a heart attack, and that would actually kill her.
Taz is a decorated former U.S. Army soldier who saw Leon's deadly demand as an opportunity to save a life.
I saw somebody in danger, and I knew that I can do something about it, and I did something about it.
Leon knew Taz by the code name Zach. He says Leon wanted him to kidnap Megan, first to talk her into taking him back, and if that didn't work, leaving town. But that wasn't all.
If she doesn't leave, what are you gonna do? And he was like, I want you to kill her.
I'm not going to comment on any of this. It's just ridiculous.
Taz says Leon paid him $9,000, which he happily spent.
To be honest, I don't feel bad that I spent Jacob's money. Matter of fact, I feel really good I spent his money. Yeah.
Then the man Leon knew as Zach vanished.
Leon Jacob was one of the most unique individuals I'd ever met.
Bail bondsman Michael Kubosh.
This guy was focused, was very intimidating. Didn't shake my hand, just wanted to know one thing. I want Zach's number. He said, I've paid Zach a lot of money to take care of this. I felt like I was talking to the devil himself.
Tucked away on a side street in Houston is perhaps the most colorful bail bondsman in all of Texas.
Having hung out a bit with you, you are the Elvis of bail bondsmen. You have such...
His name is Michael Kubosh.
These are people that we're looking for, fugitives.
And he understands the criminal mind.
I deal with the nicest, the kindest, and the meanest people on the face of the earth. I've bonded out judges, prostitutes, preachers, missionaries.
He's also a larger-than-life member of the Houston City Council, who helped save lives during Hurricane Harvey.
I can see you've been really working hard. I know all the major law enforcement people in the whole county.
Leon had stormed into Kubosh's office.
He said, I've paid Zach a lot of money to take care of this. I said, take care of what? He said, I want her out of the picture. And she can't be testifying against me.
Out of the picture.
Out of the picture. I believe that he meant ill toward this woman. And that's why I called the chief.
The chief of?
The chief of police in Houston, Texas.
A search for the mysterious Zach was triggered, and investigators quickly learned his real name, Taz Azay, a name that Kubosh did recognize as a former military man who is facing a misdemeanor theft charge for stealing from his roommate.
He was on bond with me. He was still free.
It took Houston police about a week to find Taz, and that's when things got really interesting.
To me, Taz seemed genuinely concerned for Megan.
This man is an undercover officer with the Houston Police Department who goes by the name Detective Javier.
He didn't want to see her hurt.
So Taz agreed to participate in a sting operation to help catch Leon Jacob in the act of soliciting a murder.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Taz told Leon that he felt he had grown too close to him and Valerie and thought it best to hire another hitman. And he knew just the right guy.
Can you meet me tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll clear my schedule, no problem.
The next day, Taz would introduce Leon to his new hitman, undercover detective Javier. But before Taz could hang up, Leon dropped a bomb.
We're taking care of both problems.
What, both problems?
Both of the individuals that we're talking about.
Okay.
Valerie McDaniel, Leon's new girlfriend, the mild-mannered veterinarian who friends had described as an angel, wanted her ex-husband murdered.
Valerie wants to talk to you about what she wants to do with her ex-husband.
Okay, that's good. All right, just bring her with you tomorrow.
The next day, Leon and Valerie met with Taz and Detective Javier at this Olive Garden to discuss the fate of both their exes over lunch.
The entire operation was recorded.
The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours and began with Leon's target, Megan.
I don't want you to hurt her, but I want her to go.
He told me that he wanted me to run her off the road and threaten her
But then he would say to me, if she does not understand that, then you do what you have to do.
Those options don't work. I don't give a then we gotta do what we gotta do.
There was no doubt in my mind that Leon wanted Megan killed.
The subject then turned to Valerie's target, her ex-husband, Mac.
Say if something would happen to him, would it be like a car wreck or?
It could be a car wreck. It could be a robbery gone wrong. She was under the belief that I was going to carjack him and I was going to put a bullet in his head, which is exactly what I told her I was going to do. But you need to give me the go ahead. You want to do that?
He's gonna take my daughter.
The next day, March 9th, 2017, Detective Javier called Leon to say he had good news that he insisted on delivering in person.
Are you afraid?
He went to their home where he informed them Mac was dead. Neither wanted to see this photo, which seemed to show Mac with a gunshot to the head. When Valerie got the news that her husband was dead, was she emotional about it? Did she say, oh my God, I never wanted to go this far?
She did not show that.
What they didn't know is that Mac was alive and well. He'd posed for those photos as part of this elaborate sting operation. Believing Mac was dead, Leon set his sights on Megan.
So you're gonna snatch her and you're gonna bring her somewhere and talk to her?
That's the plan.
If I need to show up, you call me.
Later that night, these staged photographs of Megan were texted to Leon, and he was told she was so out of control, she had to be killed.
She's dead. She's gone.
I don't want anything.
On that scale of good to evil, in your mind, what is Leon Jacob?
Leon is a very evil person. He was willing to do whatever he needed to do to survive.
It was probably around 2 or 3 in the morning.
On March 10th, 2017, Valerie McDaniel and her live-in boyfriend Leon Jacob get a wake-up call from Sergeant Frank Quinn that will soon lead to an Oscar-winning performance.
What's going on?
She lets them inside, but she feigns surprise. She can't understand why they're there.
Remember, just hours before, Detective Javier, posing as a hitman, had told her that Mac was dead. But now Valerie has to convince police she is hearing it for the first time.
Sorry to have to tell you. Have you heard from him recently?
She pretends to be upset. She puts her head in her hands. She sits down and she acts like she's completely shocked and surprised that her ex-husband is dead.
Is your boyfriend here with you? You think he can kind of be a little help to us now?
This surreal scene, caught by the body cameras of Houston police, is about to reach its climax.
We were hoping you could help us. We had to deliver some bad news to her. Our ex-husband's been found tonight, and it was... Oh my God. It was like, might have been a robbery gone wrong. We're just trying to if anybody knows anything or... No, I'll not be able to help us. Are you okay, baby? We've been here all night. We were here all day with their daughter, and we were watching movies. We haven't been out of the house all day except...
Then the cops decide to call cut on all this bad acting.
Right now, we're going to read you your rights. Me? Because both of you have been arrested for solicitation of capital murder.
It is only then that the couple learns that both their intended targets are alive and well.
I don't know why I'm being arrested.
Leon is led out.
Can I get a sweatshirt?
I'm already cold.
And Valerie has a much bigger concern. Her daughter, who's been asleep in the apartment this whole time. Although not caught on camera, Mac arrives to pick up their 8-year-old.
And what did Valerie say to her?
You know, something along the lines of just, you know, taking you to your daddy's outside and he's going to take you. And it was very benign and, you know, just normal as could be.
And so all of a sudden on the news media came the arrest of 2 doctors.
A Houston woman and her boyfriend were charged with trying to have their exes killed.
And I'm laying there thinking, well, that's not the Valerie I know. And they showed the film of her going up for her arraignment.
Did you about fall out of your chair?
That almost rolled out of the bed.
Because Leon has those other pending charges related to Megan, he doesn't make bail. But Valerie does.
Valerie was rushed out the jail alongside family after
and goes home to wait for the legal process to play out.
I remember texting her throughout the week and calling her and constantly sending her, I love you, you know, we can get through this. So happy you're out.
Valerie's veterinary license got suspended because of the charges. Brittany says Valerie was weighed down by her arrest and the prospect she wouldn't be seeing her daughter for a long, long time. She visited Valerie at her high-rise condo.
But I remember giving her a hug goodbye, and I just felt the life in the eyes was not there.
It's weird, things, it wasn't like bam, 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 progression. Things just gradually happened.
2 weeks after the shock and shame of being charged with solicitation of capital murder, Valerie McDaniel used her iPad
March 25th, it's been a few days.
to record her side of the story.
I didn't wake up one day and just say, hey, I want to kill my ex-husband.
For Valerie, everything she loved was slipping away.
I want to talk to my daughter. I want to talk to Leon. I'm just not strong enough. I wish I were. I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
2 days after her final recording, on March 27, 2017, Valerie, who once seemed unstoppable, did the unthinkable. She climbed over this very railing and jumped 7 stories to her death.
She wanted me to be home with her and we were going to get through this. And it was devastating and shocking.
I think that she was in a very vulnerable position when she met Leon Jacob. But I think he influenced her and brainwashed her.
I'm innocent. And as a human being and as a physician, that thought of killing somebody else just goes against everything in my nature.
It really depends on what they find.
Leon has hired one of the top defense attorneys in Texas, George Parnham, who says Valerie McDaniel was the one calling all the shots.
I'm sorry for her demise, but I believe that Valerie is and was responsible for this entire scenario.
That she was the driver. She was the financier of all of this.
That is my understanding.
The question now, what will a jury think? On March 20th, 2018, a week before the first anniversary of Valerie's suicide,
this is the state of Texas versus Leon Philip Jacob.
Leon alone stands trial on 2 counts of solicitation of capital murder.
One of the things you'll learn about Leon Jacob is he has to be in control. Mac was going to die and Megan was going to die.
Cameron Callaghan is Samantha Connect's co-prosecutor. He says Leon's motive was clear.
There was 2 obstacles to the defendant's new life with Valerie McDaniel. It was Mac and it was Megan. Mac could keep Valerie away from him by making Valerie choose between the defendant and her daughter, and Megan could make him end up in prison.
George Parnham's co-counsel, Matthew Pospisil, claims that it was the undercover officer whose identity we're protecting by calling Detective Javier, who pushed Valerie and Leon to make a deadly choice.
If it was not for Officer trying to make this into a television story and force his own narrative, Leon would not be forced here today to tell his story.
All right, thank you all. Please be seated. Let's continue.
Testimony begins with some of the early stops on this long road to justice, starting with Megan.
He didn't want her to testify against him, and he had paid somebody a lot of money to make sure that she wouldn't be here to testify against him.
He actually wanted me to make her disappear. Basically, he wanted her gone, like that.
Call your next witness, please.
Before the trial concludes, 2 potential victims will rise from the dead to take the stand.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of our jury?
And the jury will hear from Leon, who says he's only guilty of being a Casanova.
I have no problem sitting here and saying that I slept with Valerie 7 days after Megan and I broke up. But I'm not on trial for being a womanizer. I'm on trial for solicitation of capital murder. So you can assassinate my character all you want up here. It doesn't make me guilty of what you've charged me with.
One of the prosecution's strongest witnesses, Megan Veracruz, Leon's ex-girlfriend, who had filed assault charges against him in January 2017, takes the stand.
It was a long time coming. I tried to leave several times.
She recalls Leon coming to the house where she was staying just after the alleged incident.
I obviously didn't want to be near him, so I hid in a closet.
Why did you hide in a closet?
Because I was afraid of Leon. He came in and was screaming and yelling, and he said, "I know that bitch is here."
Megan says Leon kept pursuing her when she was at work.
He was in the bushes outside on a cell phone, waiting for me.
And when she drove to her new home.
At that point, I called 911 to let them know that, my ex-boyfriend who assaulted me was in a car behind me. And then at some point, Leon had gotten out of his vehicle in front of mine, just yelling and waving his hands, saying, just talk to me, I need to talk to you.
Leon was arrested a second time on stalking charges on February 16th, 2017. Less than 10 days after that, Megan was contacted by police and warned her life could be in danger. She fled to her hometown of Pittsburgh, but police soon called her to return to Houston to be part of that sting operation.
I sat in a chair in a warehouse, and they zip-tied my hands and my feet and put duct tape around my mouth to make me look as if I had been kidnapped. I was crying and really upset.
Next, it was Valerie's ex-husband, Mac McDaniel's turn.
We were married for 17 years and divorced in 2016.
He recalled finding out his ex-wife was living with Leon.
What was your initial reaction to that?
My initial reaction was not good.
And why was that?
Because I was aware of his history, his criminal history.
Did you convey to Valerie that you did not want the defendant around your daughter on the weeks that she had custody?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she agree to that?
She did.
At some point, did you learn that she was not abiding by the agreement?
I did.
Mac tells the jury he too was notified he was the target of a murder plot. Then the prosecution shows the jury that photo.
Can you describe for the members of the jury what you're doing here?
Staging my own death.
Did they pour blood on you?
Pig's blood.
3 days into the 5-day-long trial, it's the defense's turn. They call their star witness.
I never asked anybody to kill anybody.
Does the word kill, hurt, harm in any way, shape, or form appear in any of those recorded conversations?
Not on my behalf, except for to exclude them from things I want done. I never asked to have anybody hurt, killed, harmed, kidnapped, or I never asked for anybody to be in any way physically hurt.
But the prosecution says that's not true.
She's dead. She's gone.
And they claim those undercover tapes back that up.
Did you not want anybody hurt when you said, inject her with potassium chloride, stop her heart, untraceable?
I said that was something you could do. I didn't say that for him to do that.
Did you recall telling the undercover officer, if those options don't work, I don't give a then you got to do what you got to do because my survival is more important?
Yes.
Leon's own words come back to haunt him, regarding Mac as well. After the undercover officer proposed a fatal carjacking,
It could be a robbery gone wrong.
Leon offered $10,000 in 4 weekly installments.
So you're agreeing to give him $2,500 just after he tells you, I'm going to put a bullet in his head and throw him on the street.
If that's what you say.
Well, that's in the recording. It's not what I say. It's what Javier and you said, right?
I guess.
Leon and the defense team tried to make their point that the undercover officer was pressuring them into making deadly decisions.
I kept on telling them I didn't want anybody hurt, and they kept on going back to the theme of killing people. I felt a lot of pressure from them to sort of commit to this idea of killing people, and that was never my intent.
Were you asking them just to threaten people?
Essentially, yes.
Did you actually want any harm to come to anybody?
No.
But the prosecution points out that when Leon thought Megan was tied up and refusing to cooperate, he did nothing to stop the lethal final step.
You'd agree with me that you never said, no, I don't want you to do anything. Stop this. You didn't say anything like that, did you?
No.
The jury gets the case.
Has the jury reached unanimous verdicts?
And takes just an hour and 15 minutes before returning to the courtroom.
Will the jury find the defendant Leon Philip Jacob guilty of solicitation of capital murder as charged in the indictment?
Leon is found guilty on both counts of conspiring to have Megan and Mac killed. The trial moves to the sentencing phase. The same jury that found Leon guilty will decide his punishment. New testimony begins.
I have no sense of trust. Just constantly afraid that something else is going to happen.
The only thing that might impact Leon's sentence more than the words of his ex-girlfriend may end up being the words of his ex-wife.
The state calls Annie Morrison.
Annie Morrison has flown in from Chicago to testify.
Yes, there was a time that we got into a fight and he pulled a knife on me. There was one time he pushed my head down onto the counter and bruised my face near my eye.
Annie recounts an incident she says occurred when she was 7 months pregnant with their second child.
He threatened to punch me in the stomach. He kicked my legs. I remember bringing my legs up as far as I could toward my chest to try to protect my stomach. He threatened that if I ever left, that he would kill me. He said that nobody would ever find my body because he was a doctor and he had access to chemicals that would dissolve my body.
Annie did leave, moving to her parents' home in Chicago. That's when Leon started threatening her parents.
Thank you, Judge. May I publish State's Exhibit number 81 to the jury?
As the jury heard in this recording Annie made of a phone call with Leon.
The defendant, please stand.
The jury took just 1 hour to decide Leon Jacobs' sentence. Life in prison on each count. Solicitation of capital murder for Megan Veracruz and Mac McDaniel.
Victim impact statement, please.
In Texas, the victim impact statements come after the sentence. Megan takes the stand one last time.
You will never see your children grow up. You will not be a part of their lives, and they will be fed better for it. You destroyed me financially and took away my sense of security, but you can do that no more. While you sit in jail, I hope you think of me, the girl that you called poor and uneducated, because it's because of me you will be in prison for life.
What's your emergency? Okay, my mother, I don't know if she's breathing, but she's laying on the ground in the shower. I need to go over there and see if she's okay. Okay, how do you know she's down there? My dad's over there. He's in the bathroom. I'm not in the bathroom. Okay. I need to put you on hold and not, it's like a house phone.
The actual call came out where the victim fell in the shower.
Oh my God, he was going everywhere.
The supervisor at the scene called and said, I think you're going to want to come up here. There's quite a bit of blood. I'm thinking this had to have been some fall.
Dr. Newlander said that he removed his wife from the shower and ultimately took her into the bedroom in order to perform CPR. Emergency personnel determined that she was dead shortly after they arrived.
Leslie was so well known. They were both very active in the philanthropic community. He's delivered thousands of babies, so if you just multiply that out, there's literally tens of thousands of people that have some connection to Dr. Newlander.
The medical examiner makes a ruling. She slipped and fell in the shower, accidental death.
Right. I thought, how sad, and then went about doing the other things that I'm supposed to do.
This was supposed to be a fall in the shower, but we've got blood on this wall, some blood spatter up on an angled wall.
And then my suspicions began to rise, and I'm wondering if we missed something here.
Do you have any explanation as to how that blood got on the wall?
The best explanation to me is an impact event on or near the south side of the bed.
Impact spatter.
Force impacting liquid blood.
There was obviously a violent encounter in that bedroom, inconsistent with a scenario where she wakes up, goes into the shower, slips, and is discovered by her husband. It's a homicide.
It's an arrest 18 months in the making. It was originally ruled an accident, but police have been investigating ever since.
I don't think people kill people without some reason. So why did he do it?
Cam.
One of the absolute major points of the prosecution's case was the 911 call from the daughter.
Oh my God, my mother! My mommy!
Jenna Newlander was important to the prosecution and the defense because she was the only other person in the house at the time of these events.
Inside this grand home, on the morning of September 17th, 2012,
Is someone coming? Yes, they are. They're en route.
a disturbing scene was unfolding
Okay.
as 23-year-old Jenna Newlander frantically called 911.
Is she breathing? Jenna? Jenna? Oh my God.
Jenna's father, Dr. Robert Newlander, had screamed to her for help. He said he just found his wife on the floor of the bathroom shower. Within minutes, paramedics arrived at the house. 61-year-old Leslie Newlander had suffered a massive head wound. She was pronounced dead at the scene. You get a call, fall in the shower, you show up expecting to see the accident victim near the shower.
That's right. The expectations are that she's going to be either in the shower or immediately right outside the shower.
Instead, former DeWitt, New York Police Sergeant Scott Capral found Leslie in the bedroom, on the floor, close to the bed.
I walk into the actual bedroom, and that's when I catch all the blood.
Capral noticed blood in different areas of the bedroom, pooled on the rug, and spattered on the wall next to the bed.
My radar is going off as far as saying, we need to answer why all this blood is here.
Capral had plenty of questions, but Dr. Newlander seemed to have all the answers, telling investigators that after finding Leslie on the shower floor, he carried her out of the bathroom some 60 feet into the bedroom, where he could more comfortably perform CPR. Something he did despite Jenna's protests.
As he's relaying the story about what had occurred, and as the medical examiner's digesting it, and as we're all digesting it, his actual story of step-by-step process fit the pattern of where you saw these different pools of blood.
The medical examiner on the scene examined Leslie's injuries and ruled they matched up with Dr. Newlander's account. The death? A tragic accident. Leslie Newlander died from hitting her head on the shower bench.
The whole thing was odd. The whole thing was out of character with a fall in the shower.
You've been a cop 20 years. Had you ever seen head trauma like that before?
Well, not from a fall, but as we're listening to the medical examiner explain what he feels could have happened, we're not physicians, we're not forensic pathologists, we're police officers, we're investigators, so we certainly defer to him.
The account of Jenna Newlander, an eyewitness,
I see him actually carrying her.
seemed to back up the medical examiner's ruling that this was an accident when police interviewed her as part of their routine investigation.
He was like putting his face up to her to see if she was breathing.
The death of Leslie Newlander shook the community.
Everyone knew the Newlanders.
Mary Jambelic was a good friend of the Newlanders.
They seemed like the perfect couple, the perfect marriage, the perfect family, really. Leslie was a fabulous woman, very vivacious, energetic, unpretentious.
She was switched on.
Yes, I know people always speak well of the dead, but truly this was her personality, to be so giving and alive.
Leslie and Bob gave generously, both their time and money. They were well known for their philanthropy. Their social prominence dovetailed with Robert Newlander's professional standing, one of the most highly regarded gynecologists and obstetricians in the Syracuse area. He delivered a lot of babies around here.
Many, many, with a lot of good feelings toward the care he gave those patients for many, many years.
My interactions with Dr. Newlander were joyful, were these wonderful things that were happening and welcoming their baby, becoming a family.
Julie Crosby, who worked with Dr. Newlander, assisting pregnant women, says patients were drawn to his supportive demeanor.
I found Dr. Newlander to be compassionate, kind, knowledgeable.
That caring way, say those who knew them best, was a defining value for this tightly knit family. The closeness is plain to see in these birthday tributes for Robert and Leslie, made by their children, Emily and Brian from Robert's first marriage, and Ari and Jenna from Leslie and Robert's 28-year marriage, mixed with loving teasing for their mother.
She's like, how does everyone know I'm from New York? I don't understand. How does everyone know I'm from New York? Yeah.
Is a deep appreciation.
Thank you for being you. I love you.
The Newlanders' thoughtfulness was something Mary Jembelik experienced firsthand after becoming gravely ill with an infection while on vacation in the Czech Republic in the summer of 2012.
I was in a coma and then in the hospital for 3 weeks.
When she finally returned home, the first neighbors to check on her were the Newlanders.
I remember hugging everybody, and I remember Leslie saying, "We're so glad that you made it."
Just 2 days later, Mary received the devastating news. Leslie was dead. A freak accident. She'd slipped in the shower.
I couldn't believe that she had just been to see me and tell me how grateful she is that I'm alive and she's dead. It was shocking. It was overwhelming.
What did you think about that?
Well, at the time I thought, I guess that can happen even to a 61-year-old, very healthy, athletic person.
That was the same conclusion Onondaga County District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick reached when he first heard about Leslie's death. He believed it was a tragic accident until a few months later when a tip changed everything.
I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
3 months after Leslie Newlander's sudden death, Mary Jembelik began getting some unusual calls from friends.
What are they saying?
We don't think it was an accident.
And who better to share their concerns with than a forensic scientist? For 11 years, Dr. Mary Jembelik was the county's chief medical examiner until she retired in 2009.
My focus for my entire career has been to speak for the dead.
Dr. Jembelik listened carefully. There were questions about all that blood and whispers about the Newlanders' personal life.
Are you hearing about a troubled marriage?
Yes.
Are you hearing about financial problems?
Yes.
In recent years, Dr. Newlander's thriving practice had been derailed by a battle with an insurance company, and he was now delivering half the number of babies he did previously. Dr. Jembelik was reluctant to get involved, but she finally picked up the phone and called her old colleague, DA Bill Fitzpatrick.
Did you feel in some way you were betraying the Newlanders?
I felt I was responding to gossip.
As it turns out, the DA had also been hearing things. He'd received an anonymous letter just before Jembelik's call, suggesting a different side to Dr. Newlander.
That he's not the good guy that people are making him out to be. Leslie was trying to break away from this guy.
Jembelik's initial hope was she could soon put all the speculation to rest.
And she volunteers, pro bono to take a look at the case, and would I make the file available to her? And I said, absolutely.
As you began to look at this file, what jumped out at you?
The severity of the injuries compared to the explanation.
Leslie had suffered a penetrating wound toward the back of her head, so severe the blood pooled in her eye.
Had you seen head wounds like this before?
Of course.
In what kind of cases?
Car accidents, falls from, 20-story building, beatings.
What might cause this kind of injury?
A heavy object of some sort.
You're talking about getting hit with some object?
Yes.
What do you tell the district attorney after reviewing the file?
That this is a homicide, blunt head trauma from an assault.
Half a year after Leslie Newlander's death, the investigation picked up steam. Police revisited the death scene to collect more evidence from the now unoccupied Newlander home, which had been sold.
One of the things we find is blood all over the back of a headboard on the bed. We also found blood spatter on the blinds that were behind the bed.
Dr. Newlander was living in a new apartment, which was also searched. By now, he had retained one of the best criminal defense lawyers in the city, Edward Mencken.
This has been an open secret and a subject of gossip and irresponsible rumor now for months. Dr. Newlander has not been charged with any kind of offense.
Mencken assured the DA his client had nothing to hide. So much so that 15 months after Leslie's death, Dr. Newlander, now retired, voluntarily sat for an interview with prosecutors and investigators, even acknowledging there had been problems in their marriage.
But you were sleeping separately? Okay, what was the reason for that?
We had the thought about a trial separation.
Yet Robert Newlander portrays the home as peaceful and loving, despite the issues in their marriage. The night before Leslie died, the couple, along with their son Ari and daughter Jenna, had a family dinner at a friend's home. After, Ari headed back to his college dorm, and Jenna went back home with her parents.
We said goodnight to each other, and then we loved each other, and everybody kissed and went to their respective bedrooms.
Dr. Newlander tells the DA that early the next morning, he went for a jog at a nearby state park, Green Lakes, and then brought Leslie her usual cup of morning coffee when he got back.
The shower is on, I hear the water running, and I place it on the nightstand.
About an hour later, he says, he returned to check on Leslie, and there she was, lying on the shower floor. Dr. Newlander says he started CPR and tried to call 911, but the bathroom phone wasn't working. So he ran toward Jenna's bedroom, yelling for her to call 911. The time, 8:25 a.m.
My mother's, I don't know if she's breathing, but she's laying on the ground in the shower.
He said he then went back to Leslie and began to move her.
He says he can't see. The lighting is not very good in the bathroom.
He then put Leslie down just outside the bathroom to give her mouth to mouth before moving her again.
I don't know at what age we all learn that you don't move somebody with a serious head or neck injury, but we all know it. And here's a guy that's been practicing medicine for 30 years.
Finally, Dr. Newlander says he placed his wife next to the bed to continue CPR.
There's, more red flags than a bullfight going off in my head when I hear that story for the first time.
Fitzpatrick develops his own theory that hours before that 911 call, Dr. Newlander assaulted his wife in the bedroom and then likely chased her into the bathroom.
I think that he struck her on that shower bench. She may have already been in the process of dying at that point.
Fitzpatrick believes Newlander made up the story of finding Leslie in the shower and called for Jenna so he'd have a witness as he carried his wife back to the bedroom.
What do you think he was doing when he was moving her?
I think now he has got to explain the blood trail from the assault that took place in the bedroom that eventually made its way into the bathroom, and he's got to do it in reverse. He had to move that body himself to explain that blood.
As for the blood spattered in the bedroom, the DA believes Dr. Newlander didn't realize some of it was there because the violence took place before the sun was up.
And don't forget, he's committing this crime. It's dark. He doesn't know where all the blood is.
But if Leslie Newlander was attacked in her bedroom, why were the sheets nearly pristine? The Newlanders' longtime housekeeper provided a clue to investigators.
She looked at the bed and got upset and said those are not the sheets that were on that bed that Friday. She was very confident of that.
The DA believes that Dr. Newlander got rid of the sheets and the weapon on that alleged morning run.
I think the murder weapon is at the bottom of Green Lake somewhere, along with the missing sheets.
With evidence now mounting, the medical examiner changed his original report from accidental death to homicide. Nearly 2 years after Leslie Newlander's death, her husband, Dr. Robert Newlander, was charged with her murder.
The defendant moved the body of Leslie Newlander after her death to make it appear as if she had died from an accidental fall in the shower.
But Dr. Newlander's family says Fitzpatrick has it all wrong. Leslie's own children stand united with the man accused of murdering their mother. In March of 2015, 2.5 years after the death of Leslie Newlander, high drama was about to unfold in the Onondaga County Courthouse.
It has all the elements. The rich defendant, a beautiful wife, and the mystery surrounding it. Was it an accident? Was it a homicide? So it was huge. It was huge for this community.
Not only was a prominent doctor on trial, but 2 of Syracuse's top trial lawyers were squaring off to determine his guilt or innocence.
People were stopping you on the street, you know, hey, Fitz, how's it look? Or go get him, or I hope you lose.
I have never had a client whose innocence I believe in more firmly than him.
Ed Mencken spoke to local reporters, but declined our request for an interview.
If either one of them finds blood in the water, they go right for it.
We asked retired local attorney Jim Stevens to explain the defense's case. He's a CBS News consultant who attended the trial.
It was going to be riveting. It was a top-notch trial all the way around.
Each day in court began with the same scene in the hallways. Free on $100,000 bail, the doctor would arrive, flanked not only by his children, but by Leslie's sister and brother.
He didn't do it. That's the message. He didn't do it. It was not a crime.
The state has bigger hurdles to contend with than just images. Prosecutors have no weapon and no clear-cut motive.
Is it risky to go to a jury without those things?
Sure. I mean, the jurors, you know, they're not any different than you and I. They want answers.
Fitzpatrick believes the evidence, like the blood spatter in the bedroom, will tell the jury that this was no accident. And he's enlisted the help of forensic scientist Karen Green to make his case.
Bloodstains can tell you a lot.
They can tell you a lot, and they're associated with just about every crime scene that we go to.
There were no cameras in the courtroom, so we asked Green to take us through her blood spatter analysis.
There was spatter on the headboard. There was spatter on items on the nightstand just south of the bed, spatter on the blinds above the bed, and there was spatter on the south wall that was about 7 feet to the south of the bed.
Tell us about the south wall. We've been referencing it. What are the 2 spatters that are marked SBD1?
That's an area where we saw over 100 spatter stains.
The prosecution contends the spatter was primarily something called impact spatter, created when Leslie was attacked in the bedroom. To better understand the terminology, we built a set and supplied Karen Green with stage blood to give us a rudimentary lesson.
When we talk about impact spatter, what does that mean?
Impact spatter is force applied to liquid blood. So I'm going to pour some of our artificial blood here into my hand, and I'm going to punch it, and that's force going into a blood source.
The force impacts the blood, and the blood spatters.
Yes, and then the blood breaks up into smaller drops.
It's impact. That's one way blood gets out.
You can see how it's radiating out. We have some smaller stains with some directionality up to the top.
For the Newlander case, Green conducted various experiments trying to recreate the spatter in the bedroom, going so far as placing a rock covered in plastic and a wig on a bed to simulate Leslie's head.
I had a location that was similar to the Newlander bedroom with the slanted ceiling. I used all the measurements that were in the scene, the approximate height of the bed. I had a nightstand, and then I put liquid blood and I impacted it. I just had to verify that an impact on or near the south side of the bed could create spatter 6 to 7 feet away in the same distribution.
And could it?
I was able to recreate with an impact event, an impact scenario, all of the spatter that I saw in this bedroom.
But the defense mocked Green's methods and said they amounted to nothing more than whacking a mannequin over the head.
The defense had their own blood spatter expert. He testified it was not possible to determine if Leslie's death had been an accident or a homicide because the investigation had been flawed. There were not enough close-up pictures of the blood. Some of the evidence in question, like the headboard and the blinds, had been collected months after the incident. Emergency personnel had walked all over the scene. In fact, the defense suggested that EMTs may have been responsible for some of the blood spatter.
First responders probably had blood on their hands and that the gloves were just peeled off, and in so doing, the blood flies from the gloves and you don't have an impact, but you have a cast off.
The defense also argued that the blood could have been cast off by Dr. Newlander himself. The doctor said he'd been wearing a long-sleeve shirt that became so wet and bloody as he tried to frantically save his wife's life that he pulled it off.
Those spatters by the bed were caused by him removing his shirt.
Fitzpatrick scoffs at those theories, pointing out that paramedics are trained to carefully remove their gloves and that no gloves or shirt could account for the amount of blood in that room.
That doesn't explain any of the blood. It's a significant amount of blood.
The defense insists it was an accident and that there may have been a good reason why Leslie Newlander fell that morning. She had vertigo, a dizziness disorder. Leslie's personal trainer told the jury that Leslie's condition had grown worse, and her sister Joanne testified that it ran in the family and that she herself suffered from it.
The idea of her sister testifying, is that affecting your view of the case?
Sure. Why wouldn't she be madder than hell? And why wouldn't she be saying, I'm not testifying for you? What are you, crazy? You killed my sister.
To bolster their case of an accidental death, the defense hired Dr. Daniel Spitz, a medical examiner working in Michigan, who's seen more than his share of traumatic head injuries.
His testimony basically is the massive head wound that caused her death was caused as a result of her falling in the shower against the stone bench.
If Leslie sustained an injury in the shower by her head striking the stone bench, what does this do for Dr. Newlander's defense?
Home run.
But the prosecution countered that Leslie suffered at least 2 blows to her skull and that the wounds were not consistent with her head striking a straight edge like a stone shower bench.
It should be like a simple linear fracture with some bleeding underneath of it, but you don't get the complex depressed fracture like this.
Dr. Jimbelik did not testify at trial, but consulted with the prosecution. Leslie's other injuries, they say, don't add up to a slip and fall.
There were abrasions, scrapes of the skin on her cheek, a bruising on her nose, more on the left side of the cheek as well, bruising and scraping on her neck.
If she slipped and fell in the shower, why aren't there any injuries to her back or her legs, her knees, her elbows?
Critical to the prosecution's case, not just how Leslie Newlander died, but when. Dr. Spitz estimated Leslie died around 7:30 a.m. But the DA makes the case that her death could have occurred as early as 4:15, which fits his theory of a pre-dawn assault.
The time of death is absolutely inconsistent with the defendant's story.
There is now just one more witness left to testify, the doctor's daughter. What did she see that terrible morning?
She was there. She was there. The day that Jenna was to testify, the spectators were lined up in anticipation of what she was going to say.
2.5 years after Jenna Newlander's beloved mother, Leslie, died.
Thank you for being you. I love you.
The now 25-year-old devoted daughter is about to take the stand to defend her father.
There was no doubt there was pain in that courtroom when she testified.
She's trying to secure her father's freedom, and she's dealing with the death of her mother.
Right. I don't know how she got on the stand to do it.
She's the only other eyewitness. She was very, very important to the outcome of this case.
With all eyes on her, Jenna tearfully describes the mother she lost.
She was genuinely upset and mournful about testifying. The testimony forced her to bring some memories to the surface of her mother, who she clearly loved very, very much.
Jenna then tells the jury what happened in the Newlanders' home in the hours before her mother died. She says she was with her mom in Leslie's bedroom until 2 a.m. And Jenna clearly remembers the sheets on her mother's bed that night. She says they're the same ones in the death scene photos. Sheets the housekeeper said had been changed.
The changing of the sheets was a significant issue. I mean, why would you change the sheets? Change the sheets because there was blood on it.
No bloody sheets, there's no impact event.
Right, on the bed.
I need to go over there and see if she's okay. Okay.
Then there's perhaps the most critically important piece of evidence.
I need to put you on hold. It's like a house phone.
The later part of the 911 call. Jenna put the call on hold in her mother's office to get closer to the bathroom where Leslie was. Both sides argue Jenna's cry, "There's blood everywhere," is key and supports their case. To demonstrate the arguments, we made an animation of parts of the Newlander home based on evidence the prosecution presented at trial. The prosecution believes as Jenna was running into the bathroom, she passes blood here and here. A trail of blood that could not yet exist unless Robert Newlander attacked Leslie earlier in the bedroom and then left her in the shower.
She has passed the entrance to the bathroom where there's a significant amount of blood on the wall that only could have come from Leslie's head, perhaps by being pushed against that wall or perhaps being chased.
The DA says Jenna then grabbed the landline phone in the water closet to reconnect with 911 and yells, "There's blood everywhere."
Oh my God, there's blood everywhere.
You're saying it's a big deal how she even phrased, "Oh my God, there's blood everywhere," that her mother's not part of that sentence.
Exactly. Her initial response would have been, "Oh my God, my mother's bleeding, my mother's on the ground." She would have referenced what she was seeing.
Fitzpatrick believes Jenna drops the phone and the call captures seconds later the exact moment when she first sees her mom as Dr. Newlander starts to carry Leslie's body around the corner, out of the shower, and into Jenna's view. It is then she lets loose a cry of pure anguish.
As painful as it is to listen to, it is inconceivable that that call is anything other than a declaration of guilt against her father.
But the defense says the same call proves Dr. Newlander's innocence, that when Jenna runs into the bathroom, there is no blood on the walls yet. Jenna testifies she picks up the phone by the toilet, drops it because it isn't working while rushing to help her father. They carry her mother to this area, right outside the bathroom, and Jenna says it is at that point she takes a cordless phone from her mother's dressing room and reconnects with the 911 operator. In the defense view, this is when Jenna sees blood on and around her mother. This is when she yells, "There's blood everywhere."
The defense's take on that is that her mother is present in front of her and she's reacting to her mother, the blood that's on her mother, and maybe blood on the wall and on the floor as well.
Jenna was asked on the stand, "Did you see blood on your way to the water closet?"
Correct.
She answered what?
She said no.
That supports the notion that the first time she saw blood, she was looking at her mother.
Correct.
The DA, though, doesn't believe Jenna could do everything she claims to have done during the 13 seconds the 911 call was on hold. Fitzpatrick tried it himself and says it took him about 50 seconds.
It is not physically possible to to do that in 13 seconds. It's not even a close question.
There is one other part of Jenna's testimony that may be crucial. Jenna tells the jury that as her father was tending to her mother in the bedroom, she saw him take off a blood-soaked shirt and throw it to the side. Now remember, the defense suggested that tossing this bloody shirt may have caused some of the blood spatter in the bedroom, but the shirt has never been found.
There isn't a single witness that saw him with a long-sleeve shirt on other than Jenna.
If we injected Jenna Newlander with truth serum and said, "Did your father kill your mother?"
She would say no. I don't think in her mind Jenna believes that her father did this. I think she is created a protective world in her mind where mom slipped and fell in the shower.
But the question now isn't what Jenna believes, it's what the jury believes.
I'm worried that they're having an emotional reaction to the agony of this girl. They know that this girl wants them to vote not guilty. And they know that this 60-plus-year-old defendant is unlikely to reoffend. And all of those emotions can play to the detriment of a case that has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
After 8 grueling days of testimony, District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick addressed the jury one last time for closing arguments, asking them to pay close attention to the physical evidence, specifically the blood spatter on the walls and the injuries to Leslie Newlander's body.
As I said many times in the trial, Leslie will speak to you, ladies and gentlemen. You have to listen to her.
And also, to listen carefully to the words of Jenna Newlander in that critical 911 call.
Oh my God, he was blood everywhere.
It proves his guilt beyond any shadow of a doubt.
But there's one thing the DA could not share with the jury. What he suspects was the motive that sent Robert Newlander into a murderous rage that morning. Investigators learned from a friend of the Newlander family that Leslie was planning on signing a lease for a new apartment on the day she died.
Leslie was on her way out, and this is not a guy that can deal with that.
But this was not presented at trial, Fitzpatrick says, because the memory of that witness changed. She later said the apartment was for both Leslie and Robert. Ed Mencken strongly denies these accusations and insists there was no motive.
In the summation, he didn't just say not guilty. He said innocent.
Innocent. He said innocent throughout.
The jury would deliberate for 3 days before alerting the judge they had reached a verdict. Robert Newlander returned to the courthouse once again, arm in arm with his family. The pain etched on his children's faces. 2.5 years after Leslie Newlander's death, the jury found Robert Newlander guilty of her murder. A heartbroken Jenna Newlander broke the silence of the hushed courtroom, crying out loud to her father, "I was there. You didn't do it."
Let me know when everybody's said. I'm only saying it once.
Outside the courtroom, a visibly shaken Ed Mencken addressed the media.
Bob Newlander is the most honorable person I have ever met. This case has been a travesty from start to finish. It is not finished.
And so, the Newlander children turned to attorney Gerald Shargell, legendary for his defense of mob boss John Gotti, to handle their father's appeal. Shargell wasted little time calling for a hearing to throw out Newlander's conviction, alleging there was serious juror misconduct. In the spotlight, a juror named Jonna Lorraine. According to an alternate juror, Lorraine had received texts and other communications about the case during trial, against Judge Miller's orders not to discuss the case.
A search of the accused juror's phone revealed she had received some potentially prejudicial texts, including one from her father which read, "Make sure he's guilty." But weeks later, the judge upheld Dr. Newlander's conviction, pointing out the juror had been undecided in early stages of deliberations, and in the end, the judge ruled she had taken her role seriously.
Almost 4 months after the verdict, sentencing would finally commence. With family photos on display, the Newlander children returned to the courthouse. For the first time,
all right,
cameras are allowed in court. Facing a maximum sentence of 25 years to life, Newlander's family begged the judge for the minimum sentence of 15 years. Leslie's sister, Joanne, spoke on the family's behalf.
Had any of us even slightly suspected foul play of any sort, we would not be here today on Bob's behalf.
And then it was time for Robert Newlander to address the court.
My head is unbowed by the verdict of this court. For an innocent man who has been wrongfully convicted, I would not, it did not take a life. I love my wife, Leslie, very much, and I mourn her every day, now and forever.
The judge sentenced Robert Newlander to 20 years to life in a New York State prison.
In the jury's eyes, Dr. Newlander, you intentionally murdered your wife and then attempted to use your own daughter to cover it up. A daughter who most clearly adores you, which is as diabolical as it gets.
As Dr. Newlander is escorted out of the courtroom to begin his sentence, Jenna calls out.
Love you, Dad.
The Newlander children have now lost not only their mother, but their father as well.
I hate what this has done to Jenna. That's probably the most painful thing of all. He brought Jenna into that process. He made her a witness for his own purposes, and that is cruel.
But Dr. Mary Jimbelik knows she has also played a role in their suffering.
Do you have any regret about your involvement in this case?
No. This is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole career. However, it was the right thing to do, and I hold on to that. We are finally giving Leslie the acknowledgement of what happened to her.